Make sure y'all stay on point with
The Puncher's Point. What is good, y'all? Welcome back to The Puncher's Point. Now, before we start off today's topic, I do want to say I hope y'all had a very Merry Christmas. And I do want to thank y'all for all the support that you gave me with the last video with Teofimo Lopez versus Sabril Matias fight announcement. From the likes of the comments, from people who agreed, disagreed, all of it. I appreciate you and thank you so much. That was a great Christmas present to wake up to. That video did a lot of great numbers and it definitely helped out the channel a lot. But with that being said, make sure y'all continue to tune into the Puncher's Point and keep on getting content like that every single day. Now, with all that being said, enough. Junto Nakatani is going to be back into the ring February 24th, and he is going to be going up against David Cuéllar for the WBC Bantamweight Championship. Now, obviously, Junto Nakatani, being undefeated, he is the WBC Bantamweight Champion. So, overall, what does this mean? What does this mean for Junto Nakatani? Well, I mean, he's 29-0 with 22 knockouts, and I mean, the guys looked amazing. I mean, this guy has been on my radar for a very, very long time, and I am going to go out and say that he is the toughest matchup for Inoues as of right now. I mean, that's the only matchup besides if Inoues were to jump up some odd amount of weight and somehow make a fight with Tank Davis, which I don't think will ever happen. But as far as fights that could happen, Junto Nakatani is the easiest 50-50 fight. And that is going to be a very, very tough fight for Inoue when that time comes. However, that time has not came yet. Junto Nakatani, he is going to be fighting on February 24th. Now, you might be asking who else is on this card. Well, Tenshin Nazakawa, he is going to be joining him on the card just like he did on his last card. He is going up against Jason Maloney, and I know a lot of y'all are getting tired of seeing the Maloney brothers on every single top-ranked card. They don't want to go away. But you know what? Regardless of that, we also got Dago Higa versus Seiya Tsutsumi. So overall, this is a good card. And you want to take a guess on where it's going to be placed? That's right. Tokyo, Japan. Now, again, I've always expressed, my love for the Tokyo crowd. I think they're amazing boxing fans, and you could tell they just really respect the sport. So I got no problem with all these cards still being in Japan. Now, a lot of y'all are going to say, well, you wish that there would be more in the US, and I understand that completely. However, you also got to realize when the headliners of these cards are guys like Nakatani, guys like the Inoues, it's going to be on a Japanese card, and it's just something you kind of have to get used to. But don't get it twisted. We would love to see them back into the United States. Now, as far as the matchup, I'm gonna tell y'all why I don't like it. I'm gonna tell y'all straight up why I don't like it, okay? And the reason why I don't like it is because at this point, I feel like Top Rank is basically feeding Nakatani people. You see, here's the thing. Nakatani, three-division world champion. I mean, the guy's amazing, don't get me wrong. And he has some good names on his resume. I mean, if you really go down the resume and you look at the names that he has, I mean, when we look at them, he's got Andrew Maloney on that resume. I mean, and he's got some other great names as well. He again, the guy is a three-division champion. Alejandro Santiago. He's got some good guys on this resume. The problem is, now all of a sudden, since he's got these guys on his resume, we don't get to see the big fights. A lot of people were speculating Bam Rodriguez versus Nakatani. A lot of people still want to see Inoue versus Nakatani. And it just seems like they haven't really got to that point yet. And I'm going to be honest with y'all. I'm going to give y'all an even more manageable fight that Top Rank could have made that they just haven't yet. And there is no excuse why they haven't yet. I get if you don't want to make Naoya in a way. What about Takuma? Takuma and Junto Nakatani are both in the same division. I don't understand how this fight has not been made yet. And I could have sworn it was going to be made next when Nakatani and Takuma were on the same card. That fight should have been next, but it wasn't. For some reason, we don't get that fight. Now, for any of y'all who have further insight on why Takuma Inoue versus Junto Nakatani was not made, please put him down in the comments below. But overall, I mean, this is why I'm getting a little bit of frustrated with Top Rank. And again, I had expressed in the last episode that Top Rank is a great place to start off your career because they get the most attention. I mean, you're on ESPN, you're not on a streaming service where you got to pay a certain amount. You're not you guys understand what I'm saying. You're not on DAZN streaming service, which by the way, Top Rank will be joining with DAZN once this ESPN deal is all up. But Top Rank is a great place to have your career because right there it's on ESPN. And the problem with Junto Nakatani is we're not getting to see these big matchups with Junto Nakatani. And Junto is a guy who deserves these big matchups. I mean, the guy's a three-division world champion. I mean, the guy has beaten world champions, and he's been beating everybody in dominant fashion. He has proven that every single person you put up against him, he is has been defeating. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But the problem is we're not seeing the big matchups that we could be seeing. In my opinion, once you get to those lighter weight divisions, the 118s, the 122s, the 125s, when you get to those divisions, it kind of reminds me of women's boxing where you get a lot of good fights, but you don't get the great fights, you know? So we can get Natasha Jonas versus Lauren Price, but is that a super fight? No, we can get Katie Taylor, fighting somebody, but very rarely do we ever see something like Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano. Nakatani will move up. And a lot of people are going to start saying that Junto's ducking him because he's just moving one step behind in a way. So they're going to keep on saying he's ducking him. But in reality, I don't think that's the case. I think it's a matter of where their careers are going and the momentum that those careers are going in. And I hope that we get to see that fight in the future, but I'm just not sure if we're gonna. I mean, I want to see that fight happen. I don't care if it's in Japan, the United States, I don't care where it is. I want to see that fight happen, and I think it's time that that fight does happen. But overall, you really got to look into, well, Junto's got some options here. Does he jump up and try to chase after Inoue? Does he wait for maybe Bam Rodriguez? Those are some questions that we got, and those are some questions that are going to have to be answered. So overall, I mean, he's got a lot of options here. I mean, there's not many super fights you can make in women's boxing, but it's the same thing with the 115, the 118, and the 122-pound divisions going on. I mean, once you anywhere lighter than 130 pounds, I feel like that's when it's harder to make matches. It's harder to make the Bam Rodriguez versus the Nakatanis or Nakatani versus Inoue. It's harder to make these fights. And it shouldn't be that hard because Takuma Inoue and Nakatani are both on the same promotion, but they both love to fight in Tokyo. I'm guarantee you both of them are not ducking each other. I mean, again, unless somebody's got further insight on why Takuma versus Junto Nakatani has not been made, I can't see why this fight is so difficult to make. It just seems like at this point they're just stat padding Junto Nakatani's record. I mean, the last guy he fought, he was 76-1 before he fought him. That's great and all. Until you really go down the list and you start seeing the guys he's fighting. You're facing guys who are making their debuts, guys who are losing records, guys who only had five professional fights, six professional fights, and it just makes Junto Nakatani look really good. Now, you might be asking, the guy he's fighting, David Cuéllar, is he any good? Well, guys, I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't see what I don't see really the big deal, honestly. I don't see the big deal about this next fight. Now, David Cuéllar, he is undefeated, 28 wins, 18 knockouts. However, when you go down the list, he's fought guys who really aren't up there, really aren't even on Junto Nakatani's level. I mean, the last guys he's fought, I mean, we're talking about 32-9, 18-14, 40-10, 12-5, 10-6. He's fighting guys with positive records, so I guess that's a plus from the last guy. BoxRec got him as a five-star, which is absolutely wild. But we'll see. Maybe this is a guy who can give Junto Nakatani trouble. Do I think that's going to happen? Absolutely not. As of right now, Junto Nakatani is just on a different level than a lot of these guys at bantamweight. A lot of them. I mean, when you really look at it, Junto Nakatani, the stuff that he's been doing, the knockouts that he's been having, he is a hard guy to stop, and he's just going to keep on rolling. Him and Naoya Inoue are on a collision course in the future. I don't know how long that's going to be, but they are on a collision course. And when those two collide, it is going to be a great fight to see. Now, the problem is with Top Rank, I feel like, and this is my theory, okay? It doesn't mean it's a fact. I'm not saying this is guaranteed what's going on, but in my opinion, I feel like the problem with Top Rank is when you have good fighters on a card, or you have great fighters under your banner, guys like Inoues, Nakatani. When you have those types of guys, and then they start going on that collision course, you can make. Then they got a choice. You can make one big fight, and you can determine who your number one guy is, or here's the other one. You can keep them as far away from each other as possible, and you can keep having them stat pad and keep on building some fame and fire and some recognition. I feel like sometimes Top Rank doesn't want to make the big fights in their banner because I feel like they want to keep their big names. And that's a theory to me. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. That is a theory. If you guys want to talk about conspiracy theories, you guys love conspiracy theories. I think that's a theory that sometimes Top Rank does not want to create the big fights because they want to keep some of their fighters on the pedestal and don't want them to take that risk. Teofimo Lopez is taking a risk against Sabril Matias. They know that Teofimo Lopez is one of their cash cows or one of their star boxers. So they're putting him in risky fights and risky situations. They're trying to elevate him because recently Teofimo Lopez hasn't been elevated. So they're trying to elevate him with a fight against Sabril Matias in hopes that it would lead to bigger things. With Junto Nakatani, I feel like it's going to get to the point where they're going to have to do the same exact thing. Now, if y'all don't want to make the Takuma Inoue fight, Tsutsumi is also on this card as well. I mean, we're talking about a guy who is 12 and 0 right now, and he's been on a roll, and that's a guy who defeated Takuma Inoue. Now, I still want to see the Takuma Inoue fight. Why? Because Inoue is the bigger name regardless. I know it's not Naoya, but regardless, Takuma Inoue, the last name Inoue in itself, is still a bigger name, and that's still a fight that Top Rank can sell. But Tsutsumi would be a very good challenge for Junto Nakatani as well if he's not going to get to any of the Inoues anytime soon. And I get it. Naoya Inoue, he is going to, move up in weight. It's only a matter of time before Naoya Inoue ends up basically going into a whole nother weight division. He can't wait for Junto Nakatani forever. I understand that. However, I feel like when Naoya Inoue moves up, Nakatani will move up. And a lot of people are going to start saying that Junto's ducking him because he's just moving one step behind Inoue. So they're going to keep on saying he's ducking him. But in reality, I don't think that's the case. I think it's a matter of where their careers are going and the momentum that those careers are going in. And I hope that we get to see that fight in the future, but I'm just not sure if we're gonna. I mean, I want to see that fight happen. I don't care if it's in Japan, the United States, I don't care where it is. I want to see that fight happen. And I think it's time that that fight does happen. But overall, you really got to look into, well, Junto's got some options here. Does he jump up and try to chase after Inoue? Does he wait for maybe Bam Rodriguez? Those are some questions that we got, and those are some questions that are going to have to be answered. So, overall, I mean, he's got a lot of options here. Now, Junto Nakatani, let me explain something to you. This guy, I mean, if we're really looking at what Junto Nakatani is doing in boxing, and again, the accomplishments that he's a three division world champion, and it kind of feels like as far as him being a three division champion, it kind of feels like it just slipped right under our nose, like we didn't even notice it. And to me, in my personal opinion, like I said, Junto is the toughest challenge for not just Takuma in a way, but Naoya in a way. That fight can be made. That's what annoys me. That fight can be made, and it's just not. I don't understand. I understand if you don't think he's ready for Naoya, or you think that he's still got some way to go to get to Naoya. I understand why Bam Rodriguez and Nakatani haven't fought because again, Top Rank and DAZN, they don't do a lot of business together. I mean, they did Josh Taylor and Catterall, and there probably are some other ones that they have done as well, but I can't think of a lot of them. I can't think of a lot of times Top Rank and DAZN have collided and decided to go up against each other. Now, who knows? Maybe now with Top Rank joining DAZN, we get to see some of those fights. We get to see guys like Bam Rodriguez versus Nakatani. But as of right now, we got to see Nakatani in big fights. We have to see him in fights that are not guys who have their record padded up with wins. We need to see him against real fighters. And so, going back to the question, why after they were both on the same card, why couldn't we get to see Takuma versus Junto? And I can't think of many reasons why. I mean, you're talking about two boxers on the same banner, two boxers from the same country. You could have easily made it in Japan. Two boxers who, from my eyes, don't look like they're going to duck nobody. The only thing I can think of is Bob Arum is keeping these guys away from each other because I feel like he wants to have two very, very good champions instead of creating one dominant one. Because what happens when Junto goes in there and he defeats Takuma Inoue? Well, now all of a sudden he's got to go fight Naoya Inoue. Now, even though that fight is massive, it's massive, and especially if you have it in Japan, it is massive. The problem is there is going to be a loser in that fight, and there is going to be a winner. And what happens? Whoever loses that fight, because I'm telling you, that fight is 50-50. Whoever loses that fight, you're going to start seeing their hype die down completely. There isn't going to be no more two big dogs in the division. There isn't going to be no more two superstars. You're going to create one. That's exactly what happened when Teofimo Lopez fought Lomachenko. Lomachenko lost to Teofimo Lopez. Teofimo Lopez became this big star. Lomachenko had to start fighting on some free top rank cards, and he had to work his way back up to become a champion again. And he had to work his way back up to that hype again. And people really started realizing like Lomachenko wasn't to be messed with. And I feel like if that fight were to happen in the future, whoever loses that fight between Inoue and Nakatani, and I'm talking about Naoya Inoue and Nakatani, they're gonna have to slowly build their way back up. But in my opinion, I'm just not the biggest fan of this fight. I'm really not. And it seems like this card especially is tailor made for the Japanese fighters on this card. Because I'm gonna be honest with you, I I think Tenshin's gonna go in there and he's gonna get the dub. And when you really look at it, I just feel like again, this card is going to be tailor made for the Japanese fighters, and I understand that. I completely understand that you're having a card where you're showcasing your best Japanese boxers, which I understand why you would want to create the best matchups possible for them to win. And that's understandable for, the co-main event or the undercard. But as far as the main event, if you really want to start putting money into Junto Nakatani and you really want to make him a cash cow and you want to make him one of your top faces, because I'm gonna be honest, he's a great fighter, but he's not one of their top faces. When I think of top rank, I think of Tyson Fury. At the time, it was Tyson Fury. I believe, there's different things going on right there. But when I think of top rank, I think of Naoya Inoue. I think of guy. I don't think of Junto Nakatani. I don't think Junto Nakatani is one of their star fighters. I think of guys like Tyson Fury, Teofimo Lopez. I just don't think of Nakatani. At the time with women's fighters, it was Sinisa Estrada, but even her, she wasn't a top face. Junto Nakatani needs a big fight to become a top face in boxing. And you'll be surprised how many boxing fans I ran into and they're like, I'm not familiar with Junto Nakatani, which by the way, for y'all who aren't familiar with Junto Nakatani, please go check out that guy's highlights. You want to see a killer? That's a killer right there. Uh, Whenever I watch him, I'm absolutely appalled at the things he can do, honestly. Because this guy is brutal. I mean, he is insane. He's the closest, he's like a tall in a way, put it that way. And that's why I think this is so 50-50 between those two. But I'm not the biggest fan of this fight. I'm definitely gonna predict it. Y'all already know what the prediction is gonna be. Junto's gonna beat him. I don't know how yet, but Junto will beat him most likely by knockout, but that's not my final prediction. And if y'all want my final prediction, you're gonna have to tune into the prediction episode when the fight gets closer to happening. However, Junto Nakatani, the recap, to wrap up this whole episode, I'm not the biggest fan of this fight. Junto Nakatani needs to start fighting some real stars and some real, you know, pound for pound guys, and we got to start seeing Junto Nakatani in some big super fights. And the same thing with Naoya Inoue. We got to start seeing him in some of those big fights as well. Which Top Rank you can make. You have the power to make them. So why don't you go out there and just make those fights? Stop holding them back. Let let them off the leash and let them fight it out. And that is my personal opinion on that. But with that being said, this fight, I do want to remind y'all, is going to be taking place on February 24th of the new year, 2025, Tokyo, Japan. Make sure y'all definitely go check out that fight because even though it's a fight that is probably guaranteeing Junto Nakatani with a win, it is also a fight that I feel like y'all should tune into because who knows what gets made out of that fight? Who knows what changes in boxing after that? So definitely make sure y'all tune into that fight when it happens and make sure y'all tune into the prediction episode. Make sure y'all get your betting odds in the prediction episodes and make sure y'all definitely check the episodes before this. We've predicted Junto Nakatani before on the podcast, which make sure y'all definitely tune into the podcast. But we've definitely predicted Junto Nakatani before. We definitely predicted his fights. So make sure y'all take a look at that. Make sure y'all also take a look at the previous episodes that we have made, the previous prediction episodes, fight announcement episodes, post-fight analysis. Make sure y'all tune into all of those. And last but not least, make sure y'all stay on point with the Puncher's Point. What's up, y'all? If y'all love this episode, make sure y'all subscribe. You hit that notifications button and also take a look at the recent episodes that we made before this. Make sure y'all stay on point with the Puncher's Point.